prep thing I want to show. So if you, like me, have a big bag of vegetables, in this case carrots, that you know you're not going to finish before they go off, then I recommend freezing them, and then you can add them to whatever recipe you like. So I'm going to peel these, and then I have my food processor ready. So yeah, I'm going to peel these, and then use the food processor to just chop them up into little pieces, and then I'll give it a rinse and then put it into a freezer bag. And I'm glad I have the food processor, otherwise this would take, I would guess, over an hour to do. Alright, the last one is done, and now I'm going to give these a quick little rinse, and then we can chop them in the food processor. And now the last step is to bag them up. So I'm going to use these reusable fabric bags that can go in the freezer. And then we have a bag of carrots. So when I have a stash of over-ripened bananas, or bananas that look like they're on the verge of going bad if I just leave them out here like this, I like to freeze them before they do go bad, and that way I can use them later for banana bread, or banana pancakes, or a smoothie, or any kind of recipe that calls for some bananas. So I've seen people literally just grab one of these and chuck it in the freezer like that, but I say don't do that. I'll actually do a tiny bit of preparation work ahead of time, but it really only takes 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how many bananas you have to freeze. So one thing I like to do is to think ahead and give myself options of what I could do with these bananas when it comes time to using them. I could still use this for oatmeal, for example. So what I'll do is I'll chop these up as if I wanted to use them for oatmeal. So right now I've chopped the banana halfway vertically and also chopped it into smaller pieces. So I've been able to use this a few times in the past where I didn't have any fresh bananas or any apples in the fridge to add to oatmeal. So I just grabbed one of these out from the freezer, chucked it in with the hot oatmeal, and it sort of melted the bananas and it tasted perfectly fine. And then the next thing I want to do is individually wrap them up as individual bananas, so that if a recipe calls for 1 banana or half banana or 2 bananas, then I know to grab out X amount of these things. So I'll grab these plastic dividers and I'll roll it up in there. And then grab a freezer bag and slide it towards the bottom. And then I'll repeat this process for the rest of them. You're wrapping it up almost like it's a burrito. Okay, and then it's done now. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bananas in here. So if I want to make a big batch of banana bread, then I can just defrost all of these, or if I want to use one for oatmeal, then I can just grab one of them out. That's why I like to individually wrap them up like this, so that you can more easily grab one or all of them. And the last thing I did was just make a little label saying bananas and the date that I chopped these up and put them in the freezer. So yesterday for dinner I used some chickpeas and then I poured out the liquid bit. So I first strained that and then rinsed the chickpeas afterwards. Now this is very handy to use, especially if you like to bake vegan stuff once in a while. So what I want to do now is just see how much it gives me. So that's 100 ml. Then I'll make a note of that quickly on a scrap paper. So I wrote down on a piece of paper 100 ml Aquafaba, and then I want to pour it into this ice cube tray. Just leaving a bit of space at the top. Then I will let these freeze overnight and then put them into another small reusable freezer bag so that if there's ever Aquafaba needed for a recipe and it calls for 50 ml, then I can just grab out half of the ice cubes. Or if it calls for more, then I can just grab out more of these. It's the next day, so the Aquafaba ice cube should be frozen by now. So now it's just about finishing that up by putting it into some other kind of Ziploc bag, give it a label, and then putting it back in the freezer. So I have these here. And so I already went ahead and made the label. I basically just wrote down that it's Aquafaba for 1 chickpea can, or brackets also as 100 milliliters, and the date that I opened that can. And so now the recipe I recall for Aquafaba, I can either just take this whole bag out or maybe take half, depending on how much is needed. Now, if you've opened a package of wraps that you don't think you'll finish before they go bad, then this is the method that I like to do in those kind of situations. And just remember that once you've opened them, they go bad faster than you might expect them to. I believe it's around 4 days to maybe just over a week. And I'd either store them in the fridge once they're open or in an airtight container in the pantry in a dry area away from direct sunlight, but I've never tried that before. I always just put it in the fridge once it's been opened. But just for a bit of extra cleansiness, you just have to remember to do this, to do a bit of a fridge inspection every few days and see whatever might go bad in a few days and either decide to eat it or put it away in the freezer so that it can last a bit longer. And first of all, don't just plop it directly like this into the freezer, because then all those tortilla wraps will stick together and it'll be hard to take out 1 or 2 or however many you need. So the simple method I like to do is just carefully fold it. You don't have to pinch it down because then that can cause breakage, but if you just ever so lightly give it a fold, and then with each wrap in the same direction, place it into the bag. And voila! And then As a last step, I'll fold it in half, push out some of the air, and then just take a rubber band, put it around it, and then you can put this in the freezer, and then if you want to wrap for lunch or for dinner, then you can just simply grab one out. And in the microwave, you can easily just let it defrost for around 30 seconds to a minute, or you can just leave it on the counter throughout the day. But you just have to remember either the evening before or the morning of to take it out. I just ran out of my extra garlic and ginger batch that I put in the freezer to make it easier on myself when I'm making a recipe or something like that. So now it's time to make a new batch, but I do want to do it slightly different than the first time. The first time I kind of just cut them all up and then put them into one Ziploc bag, but that just made it freeze into one big block, so I want to try a different system today. But first up is just to cut these up. I have my clean bowl here, and just going to get this tedious, boring task done. This thing is awesome.
You know when I see that much garlic, it just makes me want to use more, right? I want to take more of it now. Enjoy more filming. Raw garlic, so good.
I need another small bowl for the ginger. The last piece is done, and now it's time to give this a rinse and put the ginger in the food processor as well. I'm going to set some of it aside for dinner tonight. I have my chopped garlic and ginger ready here. And now what I wanted to try is to see if I can individually put these into these ice cube trays, let them freeze like this, and then hopefully it will be easier to grab a piece of garlic out that way. The ginger to fit around 2 trays, but now it's time to do the same for the garlic. my ginger and garlic ice cubes ready to be taken out and placed into a more convenient container, something like a reusable Ziploc bag. But first thing to do is to grab a plate. So basically all I want to do is just pop these out. Start with the ginger ones first. Now I should have said this first, but before putting it in the bags, I'm going to make some labels for it because the surface is a bit more flat to ride on than compared to when these things are in there. It's a bit bumpy. I'm basically just using some Scotch Magic tape. And then with a permanent marker, I'll write down ginger and garlic on it. And now last thing left to do is just to add it in here. And now onto the garlic one. And now a super simple task like that, which saves so much time as you're cutting up ginger and garlic for future recipes. Super easy to make, and I think that this version with the so-called ice cubes will work way better than this old version of just cutting it up and chucking it in there in one go. So hopefully this will be very handy for us, and now it's time to put it back in the freezer.